This week on the Big Boss Book Club, we are looking at the latest instalment in the Saw series, Saw X. We're going to see where this fits into the timeline, we're going to see how the film goes, all that and more this week on the Big Boss Book Club. Okay, welcome back. So, we're looking at Saw X. So, I really enjoy the Saw films. I'm not the biggest fan of horror as a genre. I don't really feel Saw qualifies for that. Maybe it does. I don't know. I don't think it does. I think it's more of a psychological thriller with some gore thrown in. Because I'm an absolute scaredy cat when it comes to these things. So before you say it, it's a horror film. I do enjoy the whodunit elements of 1, 4, Jigsaw, and Spiral, and I do enjoy the sort of arcing story and how they all kind of weave together in little ways. I just don't enjoy the excessive blood or even gore in some parts either. So went to see Saw X, and we'll get into it. Just to make you aware, this is going to have spoilers. So if you don't want any spoilers or don't want to have anything ruined, I would probably recommend you stop now and come back once you've watched the film. You happy? Okay, let's get into it. So Saw X is set between Saws 1 and 2. We're primarily with John Kramer as he's battling sort of his cancer. He's basically told he has a few months to live. But before we go any further, actually, a little funny bit about this part of the film. When he's being told by the doctor, you've probably only got a few months to live, a little part of me was like, that's not his doctor. Lawrence Gordon's his doctor. Why isn't Lawrence Gordon here giving him the cancer diagnosis sort of timeline? And then I realised, of course, that this is set after Saw 1, so Lawrence Gordon's probably in a hospital getting his leg looked at. Just a funny little thing I didn't think about until the end of the film. We do get a little dream trap sequence, which he daydreams that he's trapped the cleaner at the hospital after he catches him stealing. It's actually the trap that's seen on the promo material, so like the two long pipes coming from the guy's eyes. That was a bit weird. The guy, we don't know because it's a dream thing, but the guy doesn't die, so his eyes just get sucked out. He's there screaming as sort of John kind of comes out from the daydream, which is weird. Because usually when you fail a trap, you die, don't you? So that was a bit odd. He meets by chance though a chap who's been in the cancer support group as him, the same sort of cancer support group, who basically claims that he's been to Norway and had this operation and this medical cocktail, which is used way too often in this film. And now he's alive and well, and his cancer's gone. So of course, why wouldn't you be intrigued by this? So he gives John the details. John gets in touch with this team. He then travels to Mexico, goes through the weirdest car trip ever to get to this secret location to meet Dr. Peterson, who promises to remove the tumor and again go through this medical cocktail. That term cocktail keeps getting used in this film. It is rather annoying. And he meets Parker Sears, who's a patient, who says that he's been helped, and I think I want to say thyroid cancer. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's thyroid cancer he says he's had. He meets Gabriella, who's another patient who was saved and is now hosting the doctor and her team. We meet the doctor's assistants, Matteo and Valentina. We're also made aware that this super awesome surgeon, Dr. Cortez, will be there for the operation. So the operation is carried out. Well, we see the operation being carried out, and then John Kramer looks like he's head bandaged up and he's set to start a new life, and rips out a sketch from his notebook, which looks a little bit like the headpiece from the Saw 3 rack. And we think, oh, maybe he's going to, retire as Jigsaw. They kind of tease it a little bit. He basically uses a landmark that he sees while he's at the secret location to work out where the secret location was. Yeah. He goes there with a nice bottle of tequila to give as a gift and finds the house and everything completely abandoned. And he finds basically this video evidence that the whole thing's been a sham. So basically he keeps coming in and out of consciousness as he's having this quote unquote operation, and he sees what he thinks is his brain being worked on, and actually it was just a recording from a video. So obviously at this stage he goes to do what John Kramer does. He gets in touch with the quote unquote detective on the phone to get him the information from the people, and then recruits obviously apprentice Amanda to capture all the people. Although before this, we do see him go after the taxi driver who takes him to the secret location, Diego, who basically he's also deduced was this super awesome, cool doctor, Dr. Cortez as well. Now, Diego survives his game by cutting out these, they're almost like pipe bombs on his arms. They're attached into like his arms with like cables. He basically has to cut the cables out, which he does. But he does mention before the game starts something which was later would be really important. He does mention that he told John Kramer everything he knows. So we're already getting a feeling here that John Kramer knows who these people are now. Anyway, Amanda goes after them, captures them all. They're all in a room trapped up. Amanda and John are in the center. They explain that they know everything. They have, and something again that gets mentioned that turns out to be a lot more important later on. They have the money in the office where they're going to be overseeing everything. They've taken the money that that Dr. Peterson was going to basically had stolen from John Kramer, and it's in the office, and that's where it will be. Which as soon as it happened in the film, I'll say just as a brief thing, I was like, yeah, that's a trap, isn't it? So first up is Valentina. She basically has to cut off her own leg, suck 3 ounces of bone marrow out of her leg to stop this saw cutting her head off. She doesn't succeed. She does fail. She does cut her own leg off though, and has begun the process of getting the bone marrow out. Unfortunately, doesn't quite get enough out in time to not get decapitated. So, yeah, I mean, with a lot of these things, most of them aren't going to survive, if any of them, because that would, not spoil it, but it would kind of like, you know, yeah, you know what I mean? If everyone succeeded in their traps, it wouldn't be a Saw film, would it? So, uh, and she kind of becomes a bit of a tool. So the players use her intestines to get hold of a surgical table that's been left in the center of the room, which has the doctor's phone on it, which she attempts to use, but Amanda stops her and takes the phone away. Here again, a quick side note: you could blatantly tell this was intended, because why would they allow it? Keep it in the center of the room where the phone is. Why would they leave the phone in the center of the room with where all the players were? Why would they do that? It makes absolutely no sense when they're in the office at the top and could have kept everything out of the players' hands entirely. Didn't make any sense, but that's play for later on. The players basically use Valentina's intestines. There happens to be a massively sharp piece of metal that can be used as a knife nearby. Peterson cuts her open, takes the intestines out. They use it as like a rope to get the table. Shortly after, we see Parker Sears turn up and claiming to be after his money because he's realised he was conned, and he was chasing after them to get his money back because he's paid them. So John sort of welcomes him in to observe the game, which of course Parker shows complete disgust with. Next up is Mateo, who has to basically cut a bit of his skull off and then cut out a bit of his brain matter and drop it into this acid to dissolve, which will then unlock a key and allow him to escape. Now, Mateo does manage to complete this. He does cut the skull off. He does get the brain matter out. He does get it in the acid. Again, very similar to Valentina, just doesn't quite make it. There's like a couple of seconds. He's like maybe needed a few more seconds, maybe like 20 more seconds, and he'd probably had it. But unfortunately, he also gets killed. He's got like a headset, like a headpiece on, very similar to the classic bear trap and Venus flytrap kind of traps, and it almost looks like it's like red hot, almost like I couldn't decide watching it whether or not I probably need to look it up whether or not they're heat sort of elements or whether he's like electrocuted. But either way, this mask closes. It looks almost like a kind of like Incan statue type look to it, and it has him off that way. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I'll probably have to look that up. So next up is Gabriella, who has to smash her ankle and wrist to escape shackles before she's basically cooked by what kind of looks like almost like a really like a weird heater, he says about radiation. Um, Almost looks like kind of like an X-ray, but has been powered up, souped up to the max, and is now gonna like cook her if she doesn't if she doesn't do what she needs to do. She actually succeeds, so she does use a hammer and breaks her like ankle, breaks her wrist, so that she can get out of the trap. Kind of lands on the floor. It's at this stage where Parker does the, oh, curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal, and it turns out that he's actually quote unquote in on it with Peterson and the others, and gets John to basically unlock Peterson so she can get out. She then kills Gabriella after John sort of begs her to take her to the hospital to get her medical treatment. They place John in the trap that was meant for Peterson. It then gets, well, she kind of reveals that she'd figured out he was the Jigsaw killer. I'm not quite sure. Um, yeah, like I think there's still a bit thingy here. Like, how well known is Jigsaw at this point? Because Jigsaw is supposed to be like kind of like an isolated thing. It by this point, like the FBI aren't involved because the FBI don't get involved till Saw 4. So at this point, you would think that, um, yeah, you'd think by this point that he wouldn't really be well known, and I can't imagine Peterson being aware of him because she's like an international jet setter essentially, because she's rinsing all these people of all this money. So why would she be around? So it's a bit weird, but yeah, she basically reveals that she figured out he's a Jigsaw killer and mocks him because she's outsmarted him. Claims she's glad that all the others are dead because now she doesn't have to give them any money. Um, Before she goes to put Amanda into the other half of the trap, on the suggestion of Parker, they notice that a young lad who John had befriended earlier in the film is kind of playing football outside. They grab him and put him in the trap with John. Um, John gives him the instructions to not pull because there's like two levers. So essentially, it turns into like a weird seesaw. They're both lying down, one on either end, and there's like these tanks above them that start pouring blood on them. Which is so they're basically being waterboarded, but of course Peterson cheekily calls it bloodboarding, which I just thought was absolutely cheesy as hell. Especially when I then proceeded to go look on Spotify for the soundtrack and see there's actually a song called Bloodboarding, which is really weird. Basically, the levers mean that one person goes down and one person goes up. So the person who's up in the air is not being hit by blood. The person who is down is being hit by blood. So John basically tries to make sure that the young lad isn't going to get killed. So he kind of almost tries to sacrifice himself in essence to save the young lad's life. In the meantime, though, Parker insists that they get the money and get the hell out of there. So Parker and Peterson go up to the sort of the office, the sort of room where they've been overseeing everything, and as they attempt to take the bag full of cash, set off a trap, which, in classic Saw fashion, turns off the seesaw trap. So the seesaw trap then um, stops, the blood stops, it flattens, and it comes back down to the floor. John reveals, and Amanda also revealed, that they were never locked in. They just unhook the shackles, proceed to get the young lad off. Meanwhile, in the office, a 10-minute timer has started. A tape starts playing, basically making Parker and Peterson aware that John knew the whole time that Parker was in on it. Diego had in fact told him who was involved, as we see that in sort of a cutaway flashback. They've triggered a game, which basically means that the office starts filling with this toxic sort of gas. It looks almost like acidic because it starts like burning their skin and stuff. And the thingy here is there is one hole where someone can put their head through, and that will allow them to survive. But there's only one, so they've basically got to fight each other. They do begin to fight. Peterson stabs and kills Parker, which is hilarious because they do this whole thing where Parker says to her earlier, like, "I'd die for you, baby," and it, like he says, "Oh, she'll burn you," and of course the gas burns him, and he ends up dying so she can survive. Um, as she's basically in uh, the head thing, like the head hole, it allows her to look out over where the game was being held. You basically see John get the money, which is actually down there the whole time. He hands it over to the little lad. You're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're supposed to believe that there's hundreds of thousands of dollars in that bag. Hands it over to the little lad, and then they all walk out into the sunrise. Yes, that's right. John, Amanda, covered, and this little lad, they walk out into the sunrise. Yeah, that happens. Um, Mid credits, we get to see the guy from the beginning, Henry, who told John about the amazing life saving surgery. We see him, what appears to be in the bathroom from Saws 1, 2, and 7. I think it's also in 3. I think it might even be in 3 as well, might it? Oh no, it's not. It's in. Yeah. It's in 3 for a little bit as well, isn't it? But anyway, so we see the bathroom. He's hung in the middle of it. He's got like a trap contraption on his like chest, like abdomen, and we get to see Hoffman. And he scoffs at Henry, basically saying, "Out of all the people to con, you chose to con John Kramer. That was a big mistake." And that's where the film ends. So usually we'd go for a little bit of a break here, but I'm just gonna plow through, I think. So we'll look at positives first. So we see more of Jigsaw in this, which is good because I think people are more of a fan of John Kramer than they ever were of Amanda and Hoffman and anyone else. He's a really attractive character because it's the mystique to him. He's not like like a ghost face from Scream who's just generally a nutter. He's not. Well, he is a nutter, but you know what I mean. Not in the same vein. He's not a supernatural killer. He's not like a Jason Voorhees or a Freddy Krueger. He's just this frail engineer who can trap come up with contraptions that can maim and kill you. His so his presence being more there in the film is a big positive. It's also a big negative, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So it is a little strange to see him and Amanda being displayed as protagonists as opposed to antagonists. So in this film, they're very much portrayed as the good guys. Like, you are rooting for them. And I actually said this to Vicky when we came out of the cinema because we were talking about it for a while, obviously. And I was saying it was kind of a stiff reminder that actually the people in all the Saw films, it's all of them, it's not just this one, but in all the Saw films, the people who are put in these traps are the bad guys. They are bad people. There's no good people put into these traps. There's no morally stoic people. They're all absolute. They're all criminals. They're all drug dealers. They're all shady businessmen. They're all corrupt cops. They're all drug addicts, petty criminals, gangbangers. These people are not good people. These people are all criminals. But this film really, really emphasizes the fact that if you think John Kramer is a bad person, the, these people are the absolute dregs. Like these are the real evil people. Um, and it's very much shown, and they really push it. And I don't know if that's done on purpose to try and I don't know if it's done on purpose to try and sort of really put a sympathy vote on him, because I think he already had the sympathy vote anyway. But this film really, really drives it home. Um, it is more character driven, this film, which is good. I do quite like that. Like I said, the first trap we see is kind of like a dream sequence, and it's not the beginning of the film. So the opening is not a trap, which is kind of like the first Saw since the first, well, even the first one opens up with them in the bathroom. This is probably the first Saw film to not open up with a trap. Um, yeah, yeah, I think it is. I think this is the first Saw film. I mean, Jigsaw, does that open up with a trap? I don't think it does. I can't remember. It's been a while since I watched Jigsaw. But like the dream sequence is a bit weird, but the it's very very character driven. Like we see a lot of John like going through the motions, going through the emotions. We see a lot of that before we start seeing what you would call a Saw film. Um, and I actually really enjoyed that take. I'll say it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. It was nice to see him being like, ripping the page out of the book and being like, you know what, I think this whole Jigsaw thing, because that's clearly what is going through his brain. He's like, oh, this Jigsaw thing, I've got a new lease on life. Let's enjoy life. Why should I, spend my time now maiming people? But actually, he sees that he's been a victim of crime, and actually, it just pushes him further down the path. It's like, yeah, this guy's really going to start maiming people now. So I quite enjoyed that. It's kind of nice to see that softer side, but there's like we know he's a killer. So there's the bit where he's talking to Peterson before he has his quote unquote operation, and she asks him what he does, and he says, "Oh, I help people overcome internal obstacles or something like that." And she says, "Oh, so you're like a life coach?" And he's like, "Yeah, something like that." And even the like there was only like maybe 12 people in the showing, but there was like little giggles. You're like, oh yeah, 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 life coach. Let's go for it. um the traps are cool in this film. The gore level isn't too high, which is good for me because I do not like gore. We were having this conversation after. I said the reason Saw 7 is the worst Saw film is because it's just gore for the sakes of gore. there's no there doesn't seem to be any substance to it. There's no purpose. Everything in the film has to have a purpose, and it's just like, hey, let's just kill as many people in a creative way as possible. And that's just not for me. I don't feel like that's a Saw. Oh, pardon me. I don't feel that's a Saw movie. Seeing Amanda and Hoffman back was good. I do prefer Hoffman, as anybody who's listened to the previous episodes I did about Saw. He is my favourite apprentice. I just think I still can't. I don't think there's a better reveal scene outside of Saw 1 when he stands up. But I don't think there's a better reveal scene than Saw 4 when it pans away from Riggs and you just see Hoffman stood behind him. I don't think there's a better reveal. We knew it was Hoffman. The internet already knew because it was spoiled. But but to see the camera pan back and see Hoffman stood behind him, it's like, way there we go, and just kind of look down on him. Oh, it's absolutely phenomenal. Anyway, the tease of Hoffman was good early in the film because it was like, oh, detective, I need you to help me find some people. That was really cool. You hear him on the phone a bit later on as well. but you never see him, so you kind of like, it doesn't even have to be Costas Mandalore. It could be anybody on the other end of that phone. We don't know. There was some nods to the other Saw films. So the previously mentioned Dream Trap. There was the so basically this guy's got to break his own fingers to not get his eyeballs sucked out. But the thing he uses to break his own fingers kind of looks like one of the traps from Spiral. I don't know if that was intended or not, but it kind of looked like it. When Kramer's released from the seesaw, when he sort of gets up, it's very reminiscent of how he looks in Saw 1 when he gets up. So his like mouth is open, he's kind of gasping, his eyes look like they're adjusting, and he kind of has to sort of like get up, and it's very slow, and yeah, so it kind of looks very similar to how it does in Saw 1 when he gets up from the middle of the room. I don't know, maybe that was intentional, I don't know. Also, of course, I've already mentioned it. We see this. We see the sketch he's doing in his notebook. Kind of looks like the headpiece from the rack from Saw 3, which he even says, if I remember correctly, in Saw 3, that it's a personal favourite of his. So it kind of makes sense that he's already sort of designing it quite far in advance. So overall, those were really sort of my big takeaways in terms of positives. Negatives. Now, I appreciate the fact that this film is like, I think it's maybe just shy of, or is 20 years after the first one. I think the first one's maybe 2004. Um, they look 20 years older. Amanda looks 20 years older. They didn't do a very good job de-aging her. Now, Tobin Bell can get away with it because Tobin Bell's a lot older. He looks more frail, but he's supposed to be imminently about to die from cancer. So you can kind of forgive it, and you kind of don't need to do much with that. Because in Saw 2, he looks kind of frailish, but so you can get away with him looking like he does in this film and kind of forgive it. But in but Amanda, they do not do a good job of making look younger, and she's in the film a lot with a lot of close-ups on her face, so they really can't hide the fact that she is considerably older than she was. Obviously, 20 years older. Hoffman gets away with it a little bit, um, basically because he's only in it for like seconds. Like, I mean seconds. Um, so you don't really get to see enough of him to make the judgment call on how well a job they've done of de-aging him. Even though the one thing I picked up on, his hair appears to be a lot longer than it was when you see him in Saw 3 and 4. So maybe that's the issue they've done there. They've not said to him, hey, Costas, we appreciate you've got a bit longer hair, but would you mind maybe cutting it off? I mean, there's always the argument he gets his hair cut between this and Saw 3. There's always that argument, but for me, I don't know. If you're going to have them in the film, don't just have them to show them. They cut Amanda's hair. Do you know what I mean? They could have had Amanda with beautiful long shoulder length hair if they wanted to. Oh, between Saws 1 and 2, she gets her hair cut. She cuts her hair slightly. So it's, yeah, I think that's probably reading a little bit too much into it. No mention of the other Jigsaw apprentice. So no mention of Lawrence Gordon at all. No mention of the guy from Jigsaw, the ME. No mention at all. That poor guy just cannot catch a break. He cannot catch a break to save his life, that guy. I think the biggest negative about this film is it didn't feel like a Saw film. This was something we talked about after in quite some length. The traps are there, Jigsaw and Amanda are there, Hoffman's there, tapes are there, Billy the Puppet's there. But because Jigsaw isn't this omnipotent force in the background, it's you literally are the story is being told from his perspective, which is the first time that's ever really been done. Even in the other Saw films, when we see flashbacks of him, speaking to the insurance guy, getting that book signed and things like that, they're almost being told from another person's perspective. They're not being told from the perspective of Jigsaw. This film feels like it's a sort of film about John Kramer, so therefore it doesn't really feel like a Saw film because he shouldn't be the antagonist. He should be the omnipotent. He's not. He should be the omnipotent antagonist, not the very central, in focus protagonist. So yeah, I think, yeah, that's probably my the only real gripe I could think in that perspective. Because I was thinking, like, even when like Saw 4, for example, it's all really being shown from Riggs' perspective. Um, Gordon in Saw, but in this it's very much focused on the Jigsaw crew. Um, yeah, there's no threat in the film, which is a big negative. Even when they put John on the seesaw, there's no level of threat there. You know he's going to survive, because guess what? There's like another 7+ films in the timeline after this, and he doesn't die for like another 2 films in the timeline after this. So we know that he's going to survive. There's no threat here. It's just a case of knowing how he's going to survive. So it didn't feel like there was a level of worry. Like, if you usually see someone in that perspective, like Hoffman in Saw 6, when she puts him in the bear trap, there's a level of threat here because you don't know if he's going to get out of that or not. Obviously you do, because you see him get out of it, but there's a real threat there that he could die, because we're at the end of the film. There's no, it's the last film for that period. We don't know if there's going to be another film. He could literally be killed at this moment. So there is that. Um, so even if you put him in a trap, you know he's going to live. Do you know what I mean? Finally, in terms of negatives, I'm going to just say it. This is Saw X, but it is not the 10th film, and I don't really understand why they called it Saw X. So Jigsaw doesn't feel like part of the main canon, as I believe it was supposed to have been like a new start with a new killer, obviously the ME guy. So, I mean, at a push, it's Saw 8 at a push, but with it being called Jigsaw, it didn't feel like a Saw film, if that makes sense. Like I said, there's maybe an argument it could have been Saw 8, but it wasn't even called Saw 8, it was called Jigsaw. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't called Jigsaw Saw 8 or anything like that. It was called Jigsaw. So it was the insinuation is that it's a brand new series that introduces a brand new killer that is going to be moving forward. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Um, I get a bit arsy about these things. Spiral was not Saw 9. Spiral was always touted as a spin-off. It was always touted as a separate project. It was not supposed to be in the main Saw canon. It was just supposed to be a Chris Rock spin-off series. Whether they're still going to continue with it or not, I don't think so, because otherwise there was no purpose in doing Saw X. We should have just continued with Spiral. So yeah, they altered the images and the voices, so it was nothing John Kramer related. The killer had absolutely nothing to do with John Kramer. There was no association. He wasn't an apprentice. He wasn't. His only link was John Kramer had the right idea and will target people. And he said, I'll target institutions, starting with the police force. So yeah, there was no link outside of that to Jigsaw. Absolutely no, like Saw as a series. So calling it Saw X or Saw 10, I think, is a really disingenuous and a bit of a shame. And it kind of says that they don't plan on expanding Spiral, which again is a bit of a shame, because I really enjoyed the film, and Nick from Handmaid's Tale got away at the end, so there's definitely room to grow that out. We had our Samuel L. Jackson rub. Chris Rock was involved, and I absolutely love Chris Rock. I think the film is a good piece. I've probably been a bit harsher on it in the past, but it's actually really, it was already a good film, I felt, but it's grown on me a bit more. So yeah, so a bit of a shame really, but there we go. So overall, I enjoyed the film. It's a different style of Saw film. That's not necessarily a bad thing. We've got some nice cameos, some throwbacks, a couple of Easter eggs snuck in. But I know what you're thinking, Tom. Where do you rank this film? Okay, so I've done a ranking. The 10 films in the Saw franchise, obviously. So we'll go in reverse order. Now, obviously, you're welcome to criticise this list and critique it If you're listening to this on YouTube, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. If you listen to it on a podcast platform, uh, again, reach out on YouTube and let me know. So in reverse order, in number 10, I have Saw 7. I hate Saw 7. I think it's an awful film. The only good thing about it is like the last 3 minutes where we see Lawrence Gordon and the whole reveal that Lawrence Gordon was like uh, not an apprentice, but like what would you call him? Like a specialist consultant, something like I don't know. Anyway, Saw 7 is number 10 because it's a garbage film. Next is Saw 2 at number 9. I don't like Saw 2. I like the concept of it. I just don't like it. There's too many parts in the movie that gross me out. At number 8 is Saw 3. Again, for the same reason. There's too many parts in this film that gross me out. It doesn't have as much story as I would like it to have. And yeah, Jeff is also the most pointless main character um, in the entire Saw series. At number 7, it's Saw 5. This was a tough decision, as I didn't necessarily think that's where Saw 5 should be, because its cast is great and it's the first Hoffman solo project, so it's quite cool. In sixth place is Saw X. That's right. This week's episode is only ranked 6. It's got some pretty tough competition. Although it is a good film, I, the the fact that it doesn't feel so much like a Saw film, it's more character driven. Yeah, it does kind of hinder it in the rankings. Number 5 is Saw 6. I really like Saw 6. I like the idea that a load of dodgy insurance people get in their comeuppance. I quite like it. I think it's also one of the more highly ranked Saw films as well. So yeah, I think it deserves it. In number 4, Jigsaw. I really like Jigsaw. It's a good, solid outing. It's not too gory. The level of violence is about sort of adequate for me, while still pushing the whodunit. So the whodunit factor for me is the big selling point here. So yeah, so Jigsaw gets a number 4. Number 3, Spiral. Again, the whodunit really gets it into the top spot. The fact it's a Chris Rock project, we see Samuel L. Jackson, we've got Nick from The Handmaid's Tale. I can't remember the actor's name. The film is pretty solid. It's a shame they just don't seem to be interested in expanding on it, but you know that's up to them. In second place, surprisingly, Saw 1. I have been tempted to swap this round to have it in first place because it's like the OG film, but there's still the whodunit element to it. The fact that Kramer's in the room with them the whole time is absolutely fantastic. I really like it. But in first place is Saw 4. I love Saw 4. It was really where I came into the series, so that's probably the reason why I think it's the best one. I said it before, I'll say it again. That pan out shot when you see Hoffman stood behind Riggs is great. Like, it's great. I love it. It's like, yeah, this is the new Jigsaw. He looks so angry. But he doesn't even look angry. He kind of looks like he just kind of looks completely uninterested. He's just looking down at Rig and he's just looking sort of like, yeah, whatever, and leaves. Do you know what I mean? It's good. It's good. So still my favourite. Love the reveal. I'd even be maybe tempted to swap Saw X and Saw 6, maybe. But I think I'm pretty happy with the order that I've got them in there. If you disagree or have anything to say, if you're listening to this on YouTube, leave a comment below. If you are listening to this on a podcast platform, get yourself over to YouTube, like and subscribe to the Big Boss Book Club, and leave a comment below on your preferred order if you have any, or your thoughts on the film. I wouldn't recommend this film for a Saw newbie. I would say this is probably you probably want to watch this maybe in order. So watch this after Saw 1. It's up to you. Yeah, maybe watch after Saw 1. If you're a fan of the series though, you'll just like it anyway because it's a Saw film. So There you go. That's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. You can catch us on Instagram, Big Boss Book Club, X, Big Boss 010, Facebook, Big Boss Book Club. If you are listening to this on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe. You can check out the other episodes I did on the Saw series. I will put a link in the YouTube description box. So again, get yourself over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and I'll put a link in for the other episodes if you've never heard them. They're an okay listen. And of course, I'm going to say that because I did them. If you do like and follow me on all platforms, you will receive exclusive content delivered to you in the dead of night so that no one will know the disgusting stuff you're actually listening to. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Big Boss. We're out. Peace.